Hello everyone, and welcome back. In the previous video, we explored what Git and what version control system are. In this video, we'll cover many different things that you can do with Git. To follow along, you'll need to install Git on your computer. On top of this, I'll show you how to interact with Git through the command line. Our examples will be shown on a computer running Windows, but you can use Git on any operating system. There are versions of Git available for all popular operating systems. So before we get any further, let's get Git installed on your computer. Once it's installed, you'll be able to use it from the command line, just like any other tool. On Windows, after downloading and executing the installer, you'll need to go through a bunch of different configuration options. We'll start by downloading the latest version of the software from the git-scm.com website. All right, let's click on Download for Windows button. Then click here to download. Choose the path where you want to download the file, then Save to start download. Wait a while until download is finished. Now, click on the execution file to start installing. The first window we get is the license of the software. Git is released under the GPL version 2 license, which is a free software license. All right, let's accept this license and continue with the setup. The first option we get is the installation path. We'll keep it. This window lets us select additional components to add to our Git installation. By default, Git integrates with the Windows Explorer to let us run Git command line or the Git graphical interface in the current folder. This software bundle comes with an extension for improving the support of how large files, like audio or video files, get stored in the version control system. It's a good idea to keep this enabled. The installer will also register the Git configuration files as files that should be opened with a text editor and the .sh files as files that should be executed with bash. All of this makes sense, so we'll keep these options selected. If you want, you can also enable some of the other options that will cause the icons to be displayed on the desktop, TrueType fonts to be used in the console, or software to automatically check for updates. All right, let's keep going. We get prompted for the name of the folder where we want to create all the shortcuts. Git is fine as the name for this, so let's continue. Okay, now's the time to choose the editor. This is the option that you'll most likely want to adjust. You want to select an editor that you're comfortable with. The installer already has a list of possible options that you could choose here, like Notepad++, Visual Studio Code, or Sublime Text. And we can even select any other editor we wanted by entering the path to the editor's executable file. For this video, we'll be using Visual Studio Code in all of our examples. So let's choose VS for this installation. Heads up, the bundle doesn't ship with any of these graphical editors installed. You'll need to install the one you want separately. Okay, now we want to adjust the name of the initial branch in New Repositories. We'll keep the default selection to Let Git decide. All right, we're now asked to choose how we want to adjust the path environment. This option lets us decide how we want to execute Git from the command line. Selecting the first option will make Git only accessible through the embedded command line that is shipped with the bundle. The second option, the one that's pre-selected, allows us to execute Git from the embedded command line and from the Windows command prompt. The third option will add the Unix-like tools shipped together with Git to the Windows command prompt. If you choose this option, any commands that have the same name as those in the OS will then come from the bundle and not the basic OS. We'll keep the second option selected, as it's the one that's most convenient for us, while not interfering with the local tools. In the next window, to choose which secure shell we would like Git to use, we will keep the chosen option to use ssh.exe that comes with Git. This window lets us choose how we want to validate the SSL certificates used for HTTPS connections. We can choose to use the OpenSSL library that's shipped together with Git, or use the native Windows library. You'll want the second option if you need to interact with your company's internal systems. As we'll only be interacting with GitHub, we'll choose the first option here. This window lets us select what we want to do about line endings. The characters used to indicate the end of the line are different between Windows, Linux, and Mac OS. So the Git software bundle lets us decide how we want to handle these differences. The default is to store Windows line endings on the local files, but use Unix line endings in the files stored by Git. This works well when you're using your Windows computer to collaborate with others using a different OS. The second option is to keep the line endings unchanged when copying the files locally, and use Unix line endings for the files stored in Git. This would work well if you're using a Unix-like OS, or if you're only editing through Unix-like editors on Windows. The third option is to not do any conversions. This option doesn't work well if you're trying to work with people using a different OS. So it's only recommended if all your collaborators will be running the same OS as you. Alright, let's keep the first one selected and move on. This window lets us configure the terminal emulator. The software bundle ships with its own terminal emulator that includes a bunch of nice features, like better Unicode support and a long history of commands that we can scroll. We'll keep that one selected, but if you feel like you're more comfortable with the Windows default console window, you can choose that one. Alright, we have a few extra options that we can choose to enable if we want. We'll keep these as they are. That way we'll get the performance improvements of letting Git do file system caching, and we'll be able to use Git's credential manager. We don't need to use symbolic links in our repositories, so we'll leave that disabled. We'll just click Install here to get our installation started. Alright, Git is installing on our machine. It'll take a while for it to complete. Once it's done, we'll have all the Git goodness at our fingertips. That's all for now. Don't forget to smash that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell to stay updated. In the next video, we will learn how to use Git.